Hi, my name is Andrews. Thank you so much for joining us on the Beer Parlor, another episode. For this episode, I'm going to just analyze what I really think is wrong with Manchester United and who has failed Manchester United. Stick with me, let's go through the discussions, and I hope you enjoy it. Unlike many of us who are celebrating a prosperous new year, Manchester United fans are still in pain, and Manchester United as a club is basically just struggling and still cannot find their feet in most of the games that they are playing. They have a match upcoming against Liverpool. I'm sure this video will be out after that game. But the fear and the trembling in United camp among the fans as they go away to a Liverpool team that is on the high and flying at the moment is obviously impeccable and very, very significant. And United squad, United team, United hierarchy is currently no one that is oozing a lot of confidence right now. On this episode, what I really want to discuss is to try and assess the INEOS era since they took over. Because I think INEOS taking over, first of all, there were a lot of skepticisms around whether or not even the partial takeover was what Manchester United fans really wanted. They actually wanted a full takeover from the Glazers. Now, INEOS took over. They've been given full control over the footballing side of Manchester United through a partial takeover agreement. And even then, people looked at INEOS and the fact that their handling of Nice in the French League A meant that it was really not confident. It was really not giving out a lot of confidence when it comes to whether or not people should trust INEOS as an institution or as an organization to try and bring back Manchester United to glory. But in doing so, I think there were early signs of confidence or early signs that showed promise. For instance, the appointment of Omar Barreda, Joseph Wilcox, Dan Ashworth, a lot of these top football brains that were put together in the hierarchy of Manchester United. And that and the smoothness with which it was done brought about a lot of confidence in Manchester United. I had a discussion here with Faithfulness Okom, who is a sports lawyer, also an astute Manchester United fan. During the summer, I think during the summer when Eric Ten Hag was retained and all that, and we had a discussion, and he spoke about how the hierarchy is very, very robust and why that is going to likely lead to success. I'll try and pin that episode up here somewhere, but also put it in the comment section or in the description so you can go watch it later on. But more importantly, I don't think it has worked. It's months into the season, and it doesn't seem like there's anything meaningful that has worked for Manchester United. And I'm going to show you a timeline of failed decisions that have been made, why they are in the situation that they are in now, usually reasons that are overlooked. But I think the ultimate person to be blamed is the current Manchester United CEO, Omar Barreda, and some of the executive decisions that he's overseen since his appointment. So let's start from the summer of the 2024-2025 season. Now, after the 2023-2024 season ended, during the summer, what basically happened was there was a lot of speculations about Eric Ten Hag's future. Even after he won the FA Cup trophy against Manchester City, a City team that, bear in mind, were basically hungover to some degree. And then he won the match against them. They won the trophy. Now, Manchester City eventually basically handed Eric Ten Hag his retention, right? And what that meant was that Eric Ten Hag was then put Manchester United now in a much more difficult position. I still think the decision should have been clear right from the start that if they wanted to let him go, they should have let him go. But they didn't, and eventually they decided to keep him after basically going on a public search, a public market, a market hunt for a new manager and failing to secure one. Eventually goes back to Eric Ten Hag on holidays and then tells him, you know what, we trust you, we think you are the best coach to take us forward, and we are going to back you in the market. Now, Eric Ten Hag plays a 4-2-3-1 system, right? Or at least a 4-3-3 or a back four system, which means that signings and the profiling of players were suitable for his system. But more importantly, these players were also players that had a prior working relationship with him. A lot of them, even if didn't have a prior working relationship with him, he knew them from a system that could work. So even Zexi, that he didn't have a prior working relationship with, Zexi is one person that eventually was a Dutch player, right? You look at Delict, you look at Mazraoui. These are players that he worked with, I think, from Ajax as well. And so these are players that obviously have a working relationship with the manager. And that has been the signature of a lot of Eric Ten Hag's signing. But more importantly, also, the contract extension that was handed over to Eric Ten Hag during the summer was not really an extension. It was just a triggering, it wasn't really like a new contract deal that was offered. It was triggering an extension clause in his already existing contract, which meant all the powers that he had over transfers and all the vetoes that he had in his original contract were still present in that summer window when they were doing transfers. And so you could see a lot of his preferences around the transfers that were made. Even though Eric Ten Hag came out and said, well, the signing of Delict didn't even come from him, the name came from somewhere. But obviously, I'm sure given that he had a prior working relationship with him, he would fuel it and he would quickly agree compared to if a different name came up. And probably even whoever suggested it because Eric Ten Hag has a prior working relationship with that person and would know that it's much easier for him to go for such a person than somebody entirely outside of his vision and his view. What this meant was that Manchester United brought in, I think, five players. They brought in Zegzi, Delict, Mazraoui, and Ugarte. So four players. And then they also extended the 1 year contract of Johnny Evans, which were all down to the decision of Eric Ten Hag. And so this is exactly what they did. They basically said, look, the past is the past. We've brought in a new structure. We want you to work under this structure, and we are backing you in the market. Now, when Manchester United started the season, obviously it was difficult because they still needed to work out the embedding of new players. There were some players who were still injured that needed to come back, and they were starting the season not really strong, right? And so what that meant was that the results were difficult to come by. But you could also see some improvement in the underlying metrics of Manchester United, like the number of shots they were conceding, the number of times people were just transitioning against them. These were all issues that were very, very, very alarming in the 2023-2024 season that Manchester United at the start of the season had started to fix, or at least has seen significant improvement in the underlying numbers when it comes to Eric Ten Hag. The difficulty is that they weren't scoring. So Manchester United were playing quite well, but they weren't scoring, especially at the start of the season. Then the performances got bad and bad in terms of the standard you expect, because I think with the new season came a much higher expectation, especially being back in the market, came with much higher expectation of trying to improve. And so that expectation versus the outcomes, especially with the misses, the lack of scoring, was so difficult, right? And then what they eventually did was decided to sack Eric Ten Hag just 10 games into the season. Now, here's the big problem. First, and this is the reason, the first reason why I say Omar Barreda is the problem, because Omar Barreda, who is CEO, part of those who made the decision, eventually he gets the executive sign off, goes to Eric Ten Hag, tells him, we are willing to ride along with you, and we are willing to go on this ride with you. Now, it gets rocky right from the start, 10 games into the season, and you fire him. Even though I don't like the idea of keeping Eric Ten Hag around throughout the summer, it was the worst decision ever to keep him, buy players for him, start the season with him, and then sack him 10 games into the season. Because no matter what, you have ruined the approach for the season. Not just that, but there are long-term consequences to be paid by the club. And I'm going to explain them and why probably even in the next year or two, Manchester United are still going to be really struggling to sometimes move players on who are not required by Ruben Amorim if he manages to survive even that long. The problem then is, after he sacks him, obviously Ruud van Nistelrooy is interim. He takes over the team. He goes on an unbeaten run, I think 5 games before he leaves, and then Ruben Amorim comes around. Now, Ruben Amorim, whom, again, executive decision by Omar Barreda, goes in there, says, "You are the coach I want. I bring you here." Ruben Amorim even said, "You know what? Give me time to come in the summer." They said, "No," because in my opinion, for instance, if you allowed, let's say, Van Nistelrooy to take them throughout the season, and then Ruben Amorim is still available, he comes in during the summer. But yeah, it was a good decision anyway. They showed decisiveness. They came around and said, "We want you. If you want to come, this is the time. It's either now or never." And Ruben Amorim, obviously seeing the opportunity, eventually comes around. Now, here's the problem then, because after Ruben Amorim comes around, you know very well that this is a manager who plays in a different system. Omar Barreda knows, and there are lots of people who are reporting actually that Ruben Amorim, when Manchester United went manager shopping in the summer when they were deciding whether or not Eric Ten Hag should stay. When they went manager shopping, Ruben Amorim actually came around, and like his agents and other people were pitching him to Manchester United, and Manchester United said flat out no. So what changed between the summer and 10 games into the season for Ruben Amorim to be the ultimate choice for Manchester United? Because if you bring him in the summer, some of the signings and the money that you've wasted on some of these signings would be signings that fit his system and would have given him a lot more time in preseason to assess the team and have more time to work through his details. But you bring in him 10 games into the season. Fair enough. You do that, which means you should assess and know exactly the risks that you are taking as Manchester United. You don't have a lot of financial room because of FFP rules and financial fair play, which means Manchester United, given that you don't sell a lot of players, but you buy in a lot at very exorbitant prices with huge wages, it means that you don't have a lot of room. And currently, Manchester United doesn't have a lot of room to actually buy players in January. Even if you are going to buy players in January, it makes no sense to be adding on players and go through the cycle that, for instance, Chelsea had to go through, where players become redundant, and now you have to go through another issue of trying to let those players go. So what is happening now? It means that you've brought in a coach who cannot utilize the players at hand, and a lot of the players are not fit for his system. A lot of the players do not have the qualities to play for his system. And then you have a situation where he now has to go through the worst possible coaching period of his life. Because this is a winning manager. This is a manager who has been winning. And even if he felt Manchester United was a big job, I'm not sure with the right planning, it would have been this terrible. Like, I mean, Liverpool is a big job, but with the right planning, Alan Slot is flying, right? And so if you ask me, for instance, that if Pep Guardiola had left and Amorim comes to replace him, they wouldn't be this terrible. Even though he'll be filling very big shoes, they will be playing really, really well, super, super well. Because the team he has is filled with top quality players who can play his system as well. Because Pep Guardiola is known for a lot of the time shifting into a back three and basically inverting his fullback. So he plays a 3-2 system, or even sometimes as far as risky playing a 3-1 system with Rodri, sometimes roaming around the number 10 position. What this means is that you basically have a system with players that cannot fit that system. And more annoyingly, you want to buy new players on very long 4-year, 5-year contracts who do not even fit the system that are there now. What it means is that Manchester United now have to restart that exact cycle that they were about to complete with Eric Ten Hag due to the lack of patience. Because if they had enough patience, and I'm definitely one of the people who said they should sack Eric Ten Hag, and I was very much for sacking him, especially in the summer. And when things got terrible at the start of the season as well, it was obviously very, very horrible. But to not stick with him and then to bring in Amorim, who is now wallowing very, very low. Let me see where they are even. Well, let me see where they even are at on the table. Manchester United is 14th on the table. Like, it's so terrible. And just to give you context, it's just 4 points away from 4 positions away from the relegation zone, right? 4 positions away from the relegation zone. That's how bad Manchester United are right now. And so you need to put these things into context and understand that United put themselves in this position, and the new hierarchy that they brought is starting to be their downfall, because Omar Barreda is making mistakes, but he's making costly mistakes. And these costly mistakes will take years to unwind, because now they need to find a way to ship off all these players that Ruben Amorim doesn't need. And if you look at some of these players, let's try and go through the squad and see exactly which of these players. Marcus Rashford, he's currently falling out with him. He doesn't want him. Alejandro Garnacho doesn't seem to be playing well because he doesn't allow him to play. Alejandro Garnacho is an out and out winger. And that's why recently there's been rumors about Manchester United trying to, being willing to ship him off to any team. If Real Madrid is interested, they can go for him. Joshua Zexi, I don't think Zexi is playing in a way that fits Amorim's system. Anthony, worse. Manuel Ugarte, probably one of the players that would stay. Amad Diallo, probably one of the players that plays to fit the manager's system. Lenny Euro, yes. Bruno Fernandes, I don't even think Bruno Fernandes should stay at Manchester United because I don't think he's playing really to the strengths of the manager's system. You have Matthias de Ligt, maybe. Rasmus Højlund, he's still very green, very, very fresh. I still don't think he should be the starting striker for Manchester United. Kobe Menu, yes. Andre Onana needs competition. Casemiro out the door. Mason Mount out the door. Luke Shaw should be out the door. Malaysia should be out the door. Eriksen should be out the door. Banda should be out the door. Diogo Dalot should be out the door. Even Martinez should be out the door. Right? You look at some of these players and you're like, why exactly would you have this squad and bring in a 3-4, what do you call it? 2-1 manager, right? Or a 3-4-3 manager. The system doesn't fit the players. And some of these players are players who are literally matured. And so they'll really struggle. Like Lisandro Martinez, one of the best centre backs in the Premier League when he started and he was playing in a back four. And even last season when Manchester United were struggling, every time he played, you could see that the United defence was sharply improved. Now he's playing in the back three and he can't see anything. He's really struggling. He's very, very much exposed because you need a lot of physicality in the back three. And he's not it. He's no more fitting into that system. And so it's basically the hierarchy making decisions that has really, really cost them, right? And people start to question, is INEOS going to make Manchester United another Nice? Is INEOS really here to change the fortunes of the club? Because some of these things will take years to unwind, at least 2 years to really ship out all these players and sign in the better ones. And that's even if it's going to happen. Because look at how long it took for Erik ten Hag to actually get a squad that he wants. Like, I'm not even sure, as at the time he was being sacked, he actually got to work with the squad that he wants. Now a new manager is in. He doesn't like the squad. He's going to overhaul it again. And, oh, God, if Manchester United doesn't have the patience to actually wait, no matter how terrible it is, even if it means going to relegation and coming back, which I don't think they'll go to relegation, by the way, just to be clear. But even if it means being bottom of the table, like on the 14th, 15th, 16th, and understanding that they need the time to actually grow into the league. They need the time to actually build a squad and build a team. And it's time for them to suffer, and they need to understand that they are going to suffer. But again, this is a new manager, and I'm not even sure whether they would actually give him that patience and the time to suffer. I think if you ask me, the people to be blamed is not at this point, even Erik ten Hag. It's not Ruben Amorim and his struggling system. People are saying, well, he should change the system. It's the same thing Erik ten Hag did. And when he came back to suffering, you guys said you have seen success under him. So why should you now be suffering? Because it's the exact same thing Erik ten Hag did. Erik ten Hag, when he came in, when he tried playing his system, bled for like the first 3 games of the season. And it was all news and it was all noise, right? He was struggling. What happened? He switched the system, decided to abandon his Ajax free-flowing, very possessive, risky football, and then played the conservative mid-block, low-block football, counter-attacking that got him results in his first season. That's what got Manchester United finishing third, qualifying for the Champions League, and winning the Carabao Cup trophy, right? Great. In his second season, then he tries to play his actual system. Remember, if he did that in his first season, they would have given him way more grace. And by the second season, the team would have been fine with playing that kind of football and the gradual progression would have happened. Now, this is a team that you abandoned your style and went back to results-based play and got the results. And now you went back to your original style and they started losing because obviously you need time to build a squad for that kind of play and injuries made it worse for him. And he said, and he said this several times that, look, I won't abandon that style now because we need to go through it. We need to learn to play with that style, because if not, we would never have the identity that he wants. And then eventually he gets the players, the metrics start improving, but he never gets the results and he's kicked out. So if you actually ask me, Eric Ten Hag got probably less than a full season to actually play or attempt to play his style of football when all his players were available. Amorim has started that. He's starting to stick with his philosophy. Now people are saying, abandon it, abandon it, abandon it, and then go for a results-based system. If he does that, you guys, he would have to come back to what he knows eventually, like Eric Ten Hag did, and he will no more have the grace like Eric Ten Hag didn't have in his second season and the start of his third season. So I think Amorim is right to stick with it. And Rasmus and I had this discussion when he was appointed, an episode that, again, you can go back and watch. But we said that, look, the best thing for him would be to come in and say, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. Because if not, he's going to struggle, really, really struggle, and it's not going to be a nice experience for him as a Manchester United manager. And so what is then going to happen then is, and I was saying this, sorry, before I got drifted away again, that I think those who need to be blamed is actually Omar Barreda and INEOS. Because, look, the players are failing, sure, but the terrible decisions, especially the costly decisions that have been made, wrongfully analyzing the Ten Hag situation and extending his contract with the veto, allowing him significant influence in transfers, signing players for his system, ditching him 10 games into the season, signing a manager, and now people are saying, well, they should have signed a 4-3-3 manager, a 4-2-3-1 manager, whatever, or a manager who plays a back four. But signing another manager who literally needs to overhaul the entire squad in order to play his kind of football, right? That's not continuity. That's terrible. That's very, very terrible. And if you look at it, I think this Erasmus will come and say I'm now praising them, but this is the best approach was, for instance, Chelsea. They signed Potter. They wanted Potter to play the style of football. Potter couldn't. So what did they do? They eventually removed Potter after that season, that horrible season. They brought in Poch. Poch stabilized the team. Poch wasn't playing the style of football they wanted, but he basically stabilized the team. And then brought in Maresca, who came in. At that time, the ship was steady, and then he came around and did his thing. And now Chelsea are playing very, very much well. Because within that period as well, Chelsea, when Poch was around, got the chance to sign players that eventually will fit the long-term structure that they want. But United didn't do that, right? Which means that now the new manager has to suffer through the squad building, and he doesn't get to stabilize because his system that he gets to stick with is not a system that the players have. If you brought in a manager that plays that back four, that could utilize the squad, maybe stay within the mid-leagues, and then eventually steal some sixth position or fifth position, yeah, fair enough. Eventually, then you get him off and then bring Amorim at the end of the season. Fair enough, because then he has a stable system to try and come and overhaul. He gets the transfer in over the summer and gets his work done. But now he would have to bleed through it, and that's all down to terrible management decisions by Omar Barreda, Dan Ashworth, and all those at the top, right? So I think some of these things are things that people need to start looking at, because I don't think everything is even down to the players. They are being also made to look bad by the bad decisions that are made from the top. And INEOS has to sit up, because judgment is going to be coming around very, very soon. And as to whether they've done a lot with the sporting control they have in Manchester United, the fans will tell. This has been the beer parlor of the Shaft podcast. And yeah, thank you so much for joining this episode, and I hope you enjoyed. Happy New Year, and subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Let us know what you think is wrong with Manchester United, and we'll see you around. Thanks, everyone.